All right. Hello, everyone. So thank you for your time this afternoon, this evening, and attending this session. Wonderful session we have a wonderful guest speaker with us. So I welcome you all on behalf of Rotary Club of Silicon Andhra, and I would request Mr. Srini Tontagaru to introduce our speaker for today.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Amazing Silicon Andhra Rotary team, and welcome to our host, Jitanshu. So, Jitanshu, readily agreed to extend, wherever he can help the community. So, a special, thanks to him, where time is so valuable. And when people come forward, I think it's always good to motivate them and explore the synergies. So Jitanshu is a highly motivational speaker and certified NLP trainer and a personality development coach. And there are so many other great attributes. And interestingly, he's an agriculturalist as well and a writer. And he really wants to make sure we realize, the best of the human potential. So it means a lot, when we are working in a world right now, with living through post-pandemic and probably some other unknowns always. I think we always need to keep us spirited. So I'm pretty sure, there's a lot of need in the world for more, likes of Jitanshu. So Jitanshu, on behalf of Rotary Club of Silicon Andhra and also letustalkit.com. We welcome you, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Srini. It's always a pleasure to interact with you. Just a small request to everybody. I'm logged in from 2 devices. So if in case you need to see me, so you can just pin my video screen onto your main screens, and that will do the job. Srini, it's always a pleasure to come and have a talk or a webinar. The last time that we met, we had a lot of plans, and probably I believe that this must have brewed in from there itself, that you would have thought it more appropriate for inviting me over to deliver this talk on a topic that is actually worthy of a discussion in a long conference of about days at end. But here, when we have about 1 hour at our disposal, I'll try and make it as useful as possible for everybody. I'll try and hit upon all those important points, which from the perspective of the topic that I have chosen, nurturing leadership, right? Protecting them and at the same time, giving them the opportunity, harnessing their potential. So I'll try hit on all the points as far as possible. And then let's see where we reach in the near future. So beginning with, I would just like to begin my talk with something that has hit me, and it has been with me for the past many years. When I first began reading my graduation subjects, a subject called historical theory was taught to us when I was studying in Delhi University way back about a decade ago. So at that time, I was introduced to a concept by Plato, and Plato very strongly said this, and I would like to quote him, that he said that a man is a king when he erases the fear of others. So I'll repeat this. A man is a king when he erases the fear of others, but he becomes a leader when he teaches others how to erase their fears. So I take this quotation today and I begin this webinar talk trying to highlight something that was said thousands of years ago by a scholar who actually was so visionary that he understood that what would be the need of the people probably in the 21st century, the 22nd century, and all the endless centuries that humankind is going to see. And that is a striking feature because he himself was a great leader. He himself was a great visionary. He had the skill to understand and see what it takes to build a person out of a lot of so many, and give that person all the right set of skills so that he can develop them and take them forward in making the life of other people better. So on this note, I just like to share a screen with everybody. I would just request somebody to please confirm me as soon as it is on the screen. Is this visible to everybody?
Yes, we can
Yes.
see it.
Great. Just a moment, I'll just put it on transition mode. There goes. So we're talking about nurturing leadership today. You know, in the last 15 to 20 years, leadership as a concept, leadership as a statement, leadership as a word in itself has grown tremendously. What we used to see leadership about 15 years ago, 20 years ago, it's changed. But today we're going to explore not just the journey of the change of this word, but we're also going to see how it stands today and what it meant a few years ago. So when I move forward, I would like to replay the quotation by Plato. Listening, this is another quotation by the great gentleman. And he says, listening is much more than only hearing is. Listening is much more than that. While leadership is much more than only motivating. So in the summary of this particular quotation, he says listening is much, not more, not less. Listening is much than only hearing, while leadership is much more than only motivating. So he's trying to compare it with the basic life skills, right? Generally, when we teach communication skills at university level, when we teach communication skills at graduation, post-graduation level, even in corporates, we primarily focus on this fact that listening is effective only when you hear properly. But a majority of times what people start doing is they just believe that only hearing is sufficient. That completes the listening process. Similarly, when I talk to corporate leaders, when I talk to HRs, when I talk to professionals in leadership positions, I come to know that the understanding of leadership for them begins and ends at the phenomena of motivating people. Well, that is not sufficient, you know. If you're talking about leadership and we say that I've inspired somebody, I've given somebody the right set of motivational skills, or I've given him a reason to believe on something, that is insufficient, absolutely insufficient. You know, motivation is more inward driven rather than acquired. With your body posture, while you sit, while you do something, within that itself, there is a source of inspiration for somebody who's seeking to be in the position that you are currently. So whether you are consciously aware of it or not, you're already inspiring, you're already motivating somebody. But if that is the ultimate motive for an individual, then I suppose that leadership is incomplete till now. So if leadership is not just motivating, then what exactly is it? So when we understand leadership, we need to first break down this word and we need to take it as two different words, leader and ship. Every ship has a leader, a captain. Every boat needs a director. Every army needs a general. Every company needs a guide, a person who can lead them in troubled times, just like what we are facing right now. So when I say leader, he is that or she is the person who surfaces out to stand out tall and say, okay, we're not just here to erase your problems. I'm here to teach you how to erase the problem. And when you're guiding an organization, a corporation, a government, you're leading a mandate of a majority of the people, or you're leading a team into a game, you're already guiding a ship. You're trying to take it through troubled waters. You're trying to take it through those moments where the seas would be in high tide. So you're trying to just manage and maneuver your way in between, and you're trying to achieve success. So that is what probably leadership means in the traditional concept. Over the years, as I said, it has developed, it has matured, just like fine wine, it has become a taste of its own. But probably the brewer did not even intend it to be. It is as sweet as that. So let's try and understand what exactly it would mean. I wanted to show this scenario to everybody. Now, this scenario is crucially very important. Now, what has happened is that in the last 2 decades, we've seen a clear transition in the way leadership, especially in the corporate sector, has surfaced out. So when I'm talking about the scenario, I'm taking into consideration last 20 years, right? So what has happened in the last 2 decades? That since 90s till up till, let's say, 2004, 5, I generally take that as to be a 2-decade period itself. What we were seeing in the corporate sector was leaders were majorly being outsourced. And how was this being managed? People in corporations were inviting people from outside. Now, these could have been administrative officers. They could have been veterans from the defense forces, or probably veterans from the very industries that they've worked for. People with high quality experience, with a mature outlook towards streamlining organizations. They were invited into corporations. They were given the only task that you are designated to streamline the leadership structures of our organization, and that's what you're here for. So from 90s to 2004, 2005, what we were seeing was the need for leaders was majorly outsourced, periodical basis, streamlining systems and exiting. They were not being hired to be contained. This worked very well for the past 15 years, 90s, 2004, 2005, from which we started seeing a clear transition. And from 2008 crisis, 2010 slowdowns, the 2012 slowdown, the global economy started demanding much more. And this was clearly represented in the requirements of the organizations in terms of their HR needs. And what we were seeing in 2012, when young men and women who were going out from IITs and IIMs and from all the big international business schools, a clear transition in the requirements of the companies was visible. How did we identify that? We identified this when we saw that organizations, HRs, started demanding leadership skills as a central part of the job profile. This continued further for about 6 years, 8 years, and it was here to stay for around another 10 years. But in the current scenario since 2020, when COVID-19 has somehow become a part and parcel of our life, the transition which was expected to happen in 2022 is reality now. Companies are extensively planning to invest into HRs that have the capacities to lead teams from day one. I have friends in IT giants. I have friends in banking giants. I have many ex-colleagues who are working in MNCs. They're working for global platform organizations. And all of them are seeing this, that initially what we were doing was, we were just hiring people and we were just making sure that they have some quality leadership skills in them. But today, the HRs want that the people who are coming in should have HR skills as one of the core competencies that should possess. Why did this happen? A majority of reasons being, in many organizations which were affected negatively by COVID-19, if a position was created because of the demise of a particular individual, the shoes had to be filled. The gap was created. If for a reason the organization had to exit an employee, or probably he did not deem it fit, he could not cope up with the pressure that is surmounting, was perhaps left out due to family obligations, due to any traumatic stress or whatever, these gaps were created, and these gaps were not small, they were big gaps, and they had to be plugged from people from within the organization. So as people matured, as people went ahead, they stepped further into the organizations. The lower HR gaps also started widening. So now how are they compensating it? They were compensating it with young people who had HR skills of proper leadership from day one, right? So this is the current scenario. This is what leadership has, the scene for leadership has opened up. Now, when I see leadership in the times of Plato, Socrates, Aristotle, Alexander, very late, what we've seen is traditionally what we were seeing was leadership as only a major skill on the battlefield. So what we were seeing was a man who could motivate an entire force, take them to war, win the battle, win the land, will the wealth, and make the economy of his own kingdom expand. Majorly a responsibility of the kings. But who are the modern kings now? Post globalization, post the industrial revolutions, what we've seen is that war which was being fought on the battlefield has now come down to the wars that are being fought from the boardrooms. And now you need a new set of warriors who need to take this war ahead, because just the battleground has changed. The dimensions of the war have still remained the same. And it is important for the king, it is important for the leader to understand that it is not going to be himself or herself throughout the length and breadth, throughout the existence of the organization to continue with the position of leadership. That person needs to identify new individuals who would take his place, because somebody who's going to be pulled up is going to create a gap down there. Somebody would have to fill up that gap, otherwise a vacuum would be created and the trickle down process would not happen properly. So therein when this talk becomes all the more relevant. Now, when I'm talking about leadership as a core skill in the modern workforce, we're talking about nurturing leadership, we're talking about identifying leadership. What we're missing as individuals is the observational analysis. As I said in the earlier part of my talk, we're talking too much about leadership as a concept, it like giving people the right set of skills to become leaders. But what are we really focusing on the right set of leaderships? That is what we're going to investigate through this observational analysis. So when I say observational analysis, what I mean is we are trying to identify the leadership gap. We tested the data, we scanned the data, and we found out that the Center for Creative Leadership found out that today's leadership is insufficient to meet future requirements. And what are the basic future requirements? The most important competencies that are going to be critical components for anybody to become a good and a successful leader are currently the most weak competencies in leaders today. Inspiring commitment. You can inspire a person to be just like you, the way you wear a tie, the way you wear a watch, the way you wear your shirt, the way you sit, the way you pick up your glass of water to drink. That is a personality inspiration. You can inspire somebody to talk like you. You can inspire somebody to think like you. But can you inspire the commitment in that individual to come forward and take up the responsibilities that you probably would like to give that person, or whether he is ready to adopt that role? Inspiring commitment, one of the primary weak competencies right now. Number two, leading. I would not like to say employees. It's a very narrow term. It's a very narrow definition of leadership. I would say leading people. Employees are people. Your customers are people. Your stakeholders are people. Your investors are people. The government is people. IRS is people. People everywhere. Are you ready to take them along with you? And are you ready to explore the potential of what you've set out to achieve? Strategic planning. As I said, just like the word leadership, we're talking too much of planning, strategizing, taking things forward, making sure that we're ready for the future. If we were so ready for the future, then how did we not see COVID-19 coming? Yes, of course, it is a pandemic. Yes, of course, it was present like we've started living with it, but it was present in China way before it became a pandemic. How did the international community not recognize it to become of what it has become now? Weren't we caught napping? Weren't we caught consumed in our own bubbles, thinking that it is a national problem for a country and it would not become an international issue? Or most likely it would remain a regional issue, few countries of the same culture, same diversity, and probably of the same populations, and the same medical coding would be affected by it, would not become a global problem. We were consumed by our own bubbles, inwards. We did not plan strategically, and because we did not plan strategically, we did not understand the importance of change management, how crucial it was for us. Had we embraced change, had we managed change, had we planned out for it to become a very important part of our life, we would have taken it up and we would have competently worked with it. So these 4 competencies currently are the most weakest for today's leaders. And that is where the gap has to be filled. And that is where we need, as entrepreneurs, business leaders, people in higher positions, need to understand how we are going to fill up the gaps and how we're going to train the people to become better at all these skills. Now, before I move ahead and I start explaining according to me what a definition of a leader is, I would like to engage everybody or part of my audience. Like, what do you think? Is this definition of a leader correct? Is it only contained in the 6 words that I've mentioned on the screen? Or do you think that these are broad guidelines and there are minutes which are associated to it? So if anybody would just like to unmute and give me an answer, do you think you're satisfied with the vocabulary that I have put up in my slide? Or do you think there's much more associated to it? Anybody who would like to just come forward and give me a small answer? Yes, no? Yes, no, maybe. Yeah. Shrini, how about you? Am I audible to everybody? Would you just...
Yes, we can hear you. Yeah.
Yes, it's a big yes, and it's going so nice, Jitanshu. Again, listening to you after a break.
Yeah. So Shrini, what I just wanted you to just give me as an answer is: do you think that the concept of leadership, do you think it is well explained in these 6 words, or do you think more fabrics can be like tied up with it?
Yes, I'm going through it.
Sure, please go ahead. This is being a good teacher. I'm asking all my students, be ready. I'm going to question you up. Huh? So good morning, everybody. Wake up. Yeah. Shrini,
yes.
go ahead.
Yeah, I think you covered many. I was looking for the compassion side of it, and you put the empathetic there.
Absolutely. Compassion, empathy. Must be empathetic, must be more associated with the person that they were. Good. Thanks, Shrini, for that. Actually, when we're talking about leaders, leader, we were talking about too much. A person who can inspire, a person who can go ahead, who can take us forward. But who is actually a good leader? Does that depend upon your age? Does it depend on your gender? The amount of experience that you bear? Right? Or does it really belong, like, is it based out on the qualities that you possess? Now, when I say qualities, what I actually mean is there are 2 categories of qualities that we've learned while we were spending time in the force. One are acquired. One set of qualities are acquired. The other set are inborn. And with the merger of both of these, does the personality of a person come out and he and she can claim to be a leader? I'm getting a few responses. Yeah, good. No qualities. It's the qualities that make you a qualified leader. And trust me, ladies and gentlemen, qualities of being a leader do not need to be inborn at all times. Research says a person who consciously tries to acquire the skills of leadership can learn them and sharpen them in a year, practice them for one more, and become an experienced leader by the end of the third, without even having a single word known to you about leadership. But then definitely we have to balance it out with something that is inborn as well. If we can just acquire anything, that would be more mechanical. Then what is the humanistic element of it? So that is why when I say who is a leader, we need to understand that that person is inspirational. You need to identify the people who inspire each other. They're dynamic. They'll sit up, they'll be working out, they'll be thinking, they'll be working, they'll be thinking, they'll be working, they'll be thinking. Sometimes they'll just be working, sometimes they'll just be thinking. That is the dynamism. Anything you give it to them, they'll be ready with it, they'll be working with it. They need to be believers. They need to trust, and they need to believe that yes, I can, or the other person can do it, right? They need to be empathetic. Very well put by Shrini. The compassion element, the faith in the other human beings, that concept of being able to associate with other people, that has to be there. Visionary. So when Plato said this about 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 years back, 6,000 years back, he was right that time as well. He's right now as well. So you need to be a visionary. You need to believe that this is going to come in the future. All those people in the history of human existence that thought that a human would not be able to see the sky were proved wrong. And today we talk about seeing the space. It was because of the passion and the devotion of visionaries who were able to create the frame of the first aircraft. And that has been modified over the years, and it has become what we see of it today. And then finally, a leader has to be a problem solver. Ultimately, what do we actually come together as? Very well put by Priya. I really appreciate your point. It's all in the mindset. Definitely. It is in the mindset. And as a matter of fact, if it is in your mindset to change and acquire leadership, then also you are a leader. A person who's consciously ready to change himself and acquire those skills is also a leader. He is a visionary in himself as well, right? So that is how I try to build up what a leadership definition is. So all said and done. Now I won't say let's take a test. Let's try and understand this from the perspective of a few questions. So now what I want all of you to do is, I want you all to introspect. If not introspect, then ponder upon the questions that I'm going to ask you. And then we're going to see whether we are on the right light of actually being a leader and identifying leaders. So the first question that I want to ask everybody is, we'll just take another 2 or 3 minutes. When was the last time you appreciated a person who showcased leadership skills? When was the last time that you showcased any kind of appreciation for a person who had displayed some leadership skills, right? Number 2, did you bother identifying and isolating the individual, or did you believe that more time needs to be given? Did you bother, as soon as you identified the leadership qualities, did you bother to identify and isolate the individual, or did you let it continue? Let's see it, we'll take it into the future when we'll need it, when we'll identify. So whatever you did in the last let's say last 1 year, 6 months, 8 months, that should be a sufficient time frame, right? Number 3, if you identified the leadership qualities and isolated the individuals, did you see a change in the way they operate? So when you did that, if you did that, did you see a change in the way they operate? Was that visible to you? Number 4, if the particular person you identified as a leader or as leadership material started to connect with your vision or not? It's an important question. So if I say I identified a leader about 6 months back and I gave him some sort of a responsibility, did that individual start connecting with my belief and what actually I have chosen him for? Has that individual done that? Has that individual started believing in that, right? And the last question, did you feel connected more with the purpose? I have put it in brackets, organization. So if the purpose was for the organization, or if it was for your own company, or if you were leading a project, was it for your own project? Did you see that you became far more connected, the connect for your purpose, whether it was your organization, your project, whether it was for the purpose that you did, whatever the purpose was, did your connect with that purpose become stronger once you started identifying the people, right? So I'll just take a quick round of answers. If you wish to put it in the chat section, you can put it in the chat section. If you wish to just unmute and speak, you please feel free to do that. I'll just be taking the 3 main questions. So the first one which I will be taking would be the question number 3, right? So answers for question number 3, anybody who would just like to unmute or speak, or even if you don't like to, nothing big about that. Yeah. My last event did not isolate. They have been a part of the group and start connecting. There are a lot of questions, agree to it, disagree at times. The connect for purpose was equally shared. That's great, wonderful. Anybody else who would like to just put in a few feedback or just like to unmute and speak? Mr. Sanjeev, if you would like to just join me with this discussion. Or Miss Isha would also be, I like to invite her as well. Anybody, even if you don't want to like speak up, you can just put it up in the chat section. The connect, that is the last. Let's take up the last question only. So when you started isolating them, when you started distinguishing them, did your connect become better with the purpose?
So yeah, I'd like to speak up on that matter. So I mean, we did isolate. I mean, this was at my work, and one of our manager did extremely well during the pandemic, making sure the team is connected. All right. So once we notified her that, okay, this has been amazing working with you, and the care and protection has improved significantly. So we all felt bonded, though we haven't met in person. The entire team, there were a lot of new joinees and new hires, but we haven't met them in person, but we all felt connected because of the rapport that has been built as part of team building activities that were conducted more often than which were, when in person we had less of those activities.
All right, that's great, that's great, that's great, wonderful. So in the purpose of isolation, what we've been able to achieve is, isolation has given us the opportunity to not just work in a certain way. Isolation also helps us to improve our connect with the particular purpose, right? So these questions, they're very important, not just from the perspective of our, but they're also important from the perspective of the understanding of the other individual as well, right? I'll just request you to just keep taking a few snapshots as well of this particular session. A few snapshots would be great. And if you could share them over the email with me, that would be wonderful for me. If you've heard that, would you please kindly acknowledge it?
Sure, yes.
Yeah, thanks so much. If certain screenshots of the session just for display purposes, thank you so much.
Will do.
Great. So this test, even if you've taken it, even if you do not feel the desire to share the results, but I would definitely like you to Take the results with your team or the person you generally believe on. Share the results, and then try and take out the feedback from them. How have you worked about identifying leadership and isolating them, and then believing in them and working with them? So now, this is the core of leadership. Begins with initiative taking, recognizing the areas of change improvement, building a team and recognizing the skills of each, allocating resources judiciously, and finally leading the team in an unbiased way. Now, ladies and gentlemen, through this slide, I've very easily demarcated the various points that a leadership contains. But please understand that it is just not this much. As I said in the opening slide, if hearing was listening, then every single conversation would have been a simple one. Complications in conversations start building up when listening is supported by speaking, and speaking is supported back again by listening. So the same goes for leadership. I believe I'm an initiative taker. Great, I've done that. I've created teams. I've given them the right set of resources. I've identified their skills. I'm leading them in a great way. Do you plan to stay remaining in the same place forever? Do you plan to contain your team only for that small purpose? Do you plan to remain, let's say, in shallow waters for the rest of eternity to happen? Or do you plan to take it forward? Even if the team has been created for even the smallest of the purposes, wouldn't you be creating new teams in the future? Or if the team has been created for a small project, wouldn't, if the project ends or if it expands, wouldn't we have to grow? Wouldn't your role and responsibilities as the leader go up? And wouldn't you need to create the space for more leaders? So really, are you doing that kind of a categorical demarcation of identifying new leaders? That is what we are trying to talk about over here. What I've seen from my experiences, a majority of the leaders, whether they are corporation leaders, whether they are executives in senior positions, whether they are entrepreneurs, whether they are startup owners, whether they are in the administration work, they do create teams a lot. But those teams remain confined to the minute purposes of that particular work itself. They never expand. And sometimes leaders don't even create their own teams. They are just provided with a set of resources, that is human resource, and they just start working with them. That is probably where we are failing in terms of being good leaders. And that is where the entire core of leadership is failing. What we a majority of a times do is, we have started seeing things as just the way they're coming in and then we're doing it. What we are not doing is, we are not identifying the core purpose for leadership, right? We're not identifying it to be another part of our responsibility to keep finding those individuals from within the workforce that we have, tap them, sprout them, then isolate them, put them into new soil, and give them another opportunity to blossom. On the contrary, what we are doing is, we're just picking them up and putting them in any soil that they deserve, and then let the natural dynamics and the natural environment of that particular habitat work on them without even realizing that we are planting roses with daisies. We don't realize that. It may just so happen that the rose might survive the environment. He might be able to extract a bit of the nutrient from the soil, but with the environment that the daisies are creating for themselves, would the rose be able to survive? Great, if he survives, wonderful. But would he be able to create that kind of a space from within the daisies? Or will the daisies always look at the rose as an alien? That is the responsibility of the parent leader. He needs to provide that kind of a conducive environment where everybody accepts each other and lets them operate. I come to various talks, a majority of the corporation leaders, HR and managers, they're coming to me, Jitanshu, we're not able to retain our HR. Jitanshu, the HR is not motivated to work. Jitanshu, they just leave and they just move out. We have to spend a lot of money to rehire new people. Please suggest what we can do about this. I simply say, stop treating them like animals. They are living human beings. They need that environment to work with. A majority of the leaders, what they do is after identifying the leaders, they just let things happen themselves. And then we have the brewing of what we call as office politics. In our own understanding, we probably have identified that these people are really good. Let them work, let them learn from these people. But are you really sure that the people who are you've planted them with, are they really ready to teach them? You might feel that these people are very good. They have been in the organizations for 20 years, 15 years. You've worked with them, you trust them. Are they really giving the right set of skills to this individual to grow? Or are they actually creating the environment for weeding them out? That you're not doing leadership, but instead you are actually doing the grave mistakes which a majority of the corporations are doing across the globe, not addressing the issue. Talent wants to stay. If you recognize the talent, if you give them the platform to learn, but as soon as they are planted with people that they don't belong to, or they're not ready or comfortable to work with, or the people themselves are that you're not identifying those weeds which are acting to look like those beautiful flowers, but actually damaging the entire nutrition value of your team. You're not weeding them out. You're putting them there. That is where your role as not just a leader comes in, but as a protector, as a nurturer comes in. You are the one who has to identify from which particular place have to pick you up and where you have to plant them, replant them. That protection value has to come from you. And when I say protection, I don't want you to just start bodyguarding them. No, that is not your work. They are mature adults who need to identify the ways they're going to survive in teams and learn from them and then grow up. You're not there to protect them in terms of bodyguarding, but yes, you are there in terms of providing them justice. As soon as teams are changed, they're laden with work. They're laden with challenges that they're unable to accomplish because of lack of training and skill. I want them to perform, but I'm not providing them with the right set of skills. That is not going to help them with the job. So if you're first identifying them, ensure that you're ready to nurture them as well. You're ready to take them with you. You're ready to guide them and you're ready to protect them. That is where the core of leadership begins. From where you can actually start helping these young individuals who have not got that much of an experience to come out and share their skills and learn and become more experienced. Right? Now for that, generally what individuals I've seen use basically these three styles of leadership. The core three styles, a multiple number of styles have come up, but these three remain as the center of all. First, the autocratic. I do the way I do, you do it the way I do. Otherwise, you don't stay. Autocratic. This is one form of leadership. Nothing bad in that. This is very good when you've got to achieve targets, right? And you don't have any intention to create a new team. So you can do that. You do this, otherwise you're out. The other is laissez-faire. What we actually generally in terms of, I call it a more democratic form of it. Less democratic as the actual democratic, but yes, what you're doing is you give the authority to these people, you nurture them, you protect them, and then once they start learning, you divide the work for them. So now what you're doing is you're giving equal opportunity and equal responsibility to everybody with equal rights. And then you decide, okay, is X good for the job and Y good for the job? Great. Whoever is good for the job, you first give them the right platform. And then give them the choice. Either of the two, you give them the choice, and you do create that kind of environment where they can choose. Okay, sir, this does not look good. Let's take this. Okay, ma'am, this does not look good. Let's do this. So you identifying them, nurturing them, protecting them, giving them the right set of judicious resources, and then giving them a choice. So that's more, laissez-faire. That is far more good for you. And the final one is democratic. So you invest all the power and resources into the people. You take the decision. I am out of it. But that does not mean that you're completely out of it. You're just there to be the initiator, the purposeer. You're there to be the purposeer. But what you've done is you've given them the authority. I need this to happen. Decide whichever way you think it is, and you can do it. So these styles of leadership are crucially important for identifying, nurturing, and protecting the people, right? Now, what we need to understand is as corporation leaders is that where does leadership really begin? It can begin anywhere, you know. Leadership is not always from top to bottom. You just don't need to see that, okay, it has to come from the most experienced towards the people who are not least experienced. Sometimes the least experienced people can come forward and lead a team in actually realizing the goal of the organization. 2008, 26/11 attacks were happening at various locations in Mumbai. And in the Taj Hotel, something different was being undertaken. Young butlers, young banquet managers, aged 22, 23 years, out of tier 2, tier 3 rural scapes. I'm talking about employees from cities like Chandigarh, Haldia, from Patna. We're talking about cities that are just there on the map of India as capital cities, but they are not celebrated as places from where we see the vast majority of the Indian leader mass force is considered to be metropolitan in India, right? These people are coming from tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 cities and from the rural areas. Butlers, banquet managers. They were the ones who were protecting the guests at Taj Mahal Hotel. An entire fleet of telephone operators was rescued. They voluntarily came back and they started assisting each and every guest who had checked into the hotel that night. Each one of them. They were protecting them using the phones. Do not open up the doors. Let them bang. The doors are protected. They are fireproof. They cannot fire at you. Whatever they were guiding the people. The chefs, sous chefs, the people who never come into the forefront were the ones who were protecting guests and giving them free access into the fire exit and through the lobby area out into the open. One of them, when he attacked those kitchens, these chefs formed a line, a protection wall, a human wall, and they took the bullets while the guests were able to freely move out. So leadership can begin at any point. You know, the ultimate purpose for that particular organization on that terrible night was to protect its citizens, its guests. And these young chaps, these young boys and girls, they rose up to the occasion and they said, we'll do it. So leadership is not always top to bottom. It is sometimes from bottom to up as well. It's about taking the right decisions. Had those chefs not taken the right decision to protect those people, they would never have been able to save as many guests as they could. That was the right decision to take. In the hospitality industry, it's always the guest first. They could have easily saved their lives, but they chose to come back for the objective of their duties. That is leadership. And leadership is thinking about all before the self. This is something that the Tatas really invest in. When they hire their HR, they make sure that they're grooming their HR to identify themselves as leaders in all positions, and they give them the opportunity to progress in life. Right? That is a belief of a leader who wants to generate more leaders. They are at every moment protecting them from office politics. They're protecting them from burnouts. They're protecting their employees from going ahead and completely like falling apart. They're knitting their teams together, and that is replicating in the commitment that these individuals are showing towards their job. To the extent that they can take a life-threatening decision for the commitment towards their duties. So leadership can begin anywhere. It doesn't matter where you're seeing it from. And this is what happens when leadership takes place. The magic, the responsibility shared. You're not the only one who's believing in it. It's divided between everybody. You attain a sense of respect. The individual becomes the collective, and finally good teams are made. These are the teams who remain in the organizations for long. They become managers, senior level managers, administrative managers. They become directors and board members, and they are the ones who remain in the organization and take it to new glories. But this is not just the only purpose for which I am here. The reason why I had actually collected my thoughts tonight was because I wanted all of you to understand that leadership as a concept is very good, it's amazing. We are identifying new individuals, we're trying to take them on board, we're trying to give them new opportunities, but are we really nurturing and protecting them? That is what we need to understand. So what we're going to just try and see is, in the next 5 to 7 minutes, I'm just going to discuss a few points that are crucial from the ending point of the discussion, and then I'll be concluding my talk. First things first, differentiation between acquired leadership and natural leadership. That needs to be first call for you. If it is natural, very good. If it is acquired, excellent. But if it is a mix, you need to ensure that whoever you are identifying to replace all those places, those plugs, you have to plug those gaps. They have to be a mix. If they don't know something, it is your responsibility to teach them. So you need to make sure that they acquire the amount of skills that you need them to have to take up those leadership positions. What this pandemic has taught us is that when we focus only on the central issue, we come down to solving the central issue. Most of the times what we see is selection of leadership positions is generally a shoulder-to-shoulder transferred job. I've seen that personally. I've experienced this personally. Shoulder-to-shoulder, it is transferred. Not my burden, you take over. The second says, not my burden, you take over. Third says, not my burden, you take over. And in a trickle-down process, it is being commanded from the highest to the lowest. And finally, it comes down to the responsibility of the people who have the least sense of experience, the least set of skills. Because of experience, they do not have those skill sets right now to identify quality leaders, nurture them, and protect them. And amongst this, who is taking the maximum advantage? Probably those people who are not that comfortable from somebody else rising in organizations. Devilry is a craft. You learn it over time. You're not born with it. It's a craft. You learn it over time. So when this shoulder shifting happens and the person is not identifying it to be his responsibility or her responsibility, ultimately you cannot complain that my teams are not working for me, because it is your responsibility to ensure that the teams are functioning properly. Yes, of course, you cannot go down into the absolute bottom and see who is working and who's not, but you can at least command that same set of skills to the people who are going to do the choosing job. They should believe in your vision, and that vision should flow downwards. So what the pandemic has taught us is never shift shoulders. If it is your job, focus on it, identify it. You cannot say, I don't have time for this. It is not a part of my KRA. If you're a leader, if you're an entrepreneur, you cannot say, my job is to invest money. That is not what I'm here for. You cannot say that. Investing into HR is also a part of your KRA. And unlike machines, they deserve your attention. Even machines deserve your attention. If you don't give them much attention, they will cease to work. Same is the functioning with the HR mechanisms. So what the pandemic has taught us, number one, stop shifting shoulders. Number two, do the job the way it is supposed to be done. As soon as we see, okay, I've identified 2 or 3 leaders, great. My organization is doing excellently well. My HR team is doing excellently well. You're lucky enough you've got a few. But are you lucky every single time? You know, the harder you work, the luckier you get. That concept works here equally well. So if you're working hard in actually understanding that, yes, your team, you need to identify more people. You'll be lucky once, you'll be lucky twice, you'll be lucky the third time as well. You'll find those people every time, because once you are identifying them, you're nurturing them, you're protecting them, they will like to work for you. They will like to work with you. Right? Sure, I'll just be winding up as soon as I just need to make a few points. Just give me a few more minutes. Right? And more importantly, once you've identified them, are you ready to give them the right playground to work with? See, when I'm saying playground, you'll have to treat them like children. When your children goes to a playground, tries to play something, you don't start beating that particular, if he's not able to hit the ball on the very first go, or if he falls from a slide, or if he falls off a cycle. You don't start beating them. You don't start criticizing them. You encourage them. You motivate them. You make them more confident. Okay, this time you've fallen. Don't do this time. And you will have to give them the courage. This courage is what these young leaders are looking out for. And that courage can only come from you. Again, in the trickle-down process. If you have encouraged your managers would encourage your workforce. If you criticize your managers, they're going to criticize your workforce. It's a trickle-down process. So the protectional column also believes on first giving the right playground and then also giving them the right confidence. You'll probably have to ignore some of their mistakes as well. They're in the learning stage. They're young, they're dynamic, they're young, they'll learn. Give them the appreciation for what they've done right. Give them the feedback for what they've done wrong, and give them another opportunity. They'll do better the next time. Rather than completely pink sheeting them on the very first go and saying, you're not required, that is going to kill their confidence. They'll never, ever raise their hands. And apart from them, nobody else is going to raise their hand in the organization. They say, I'm pink sheeted for something that is so natural to happen. I know resources are invested, and if results are not achieved, they hurt. But if we are looking minutely only in the present, we'll miss what we call as being visionaries, the future, right? And last but not the least, what I believe is in trust. Trust your teams. They'll come out, they'll work with you, they'll believe in what you actually wanted to set out for. So on this note, I'll just be ending my talk with this very, very small video for all of you to see. This is a dedication from my side for the gentleman who I regard the most in my life. And this person has completely changed my life in the way I see leadership. A tribute to this great human being. Please watch and enjoy and celebrate the life of this great leader.
I, Aul Akib Zainulabdin Abdul Kalam, do swearing in the name of God that I will faithfully execute the office of the President of India.
Smiling is a fantastic. Give me a second, I'll just replay it. Just give me a second, I'll just replay it. Yeah.
I, Aul Fakir Jainuddin Abdul Kalam, do swear in the name of God that I will faithfully execute the office of the President of India.
You know, smiling is a fantastic thing. If you smile, the whole day will be smiling. If you don't smile, they will not smile. So it's like, make it a habit to smile. It creates a lot of friendship, a lot of happiness. Where there is righteousness in the heart, there is beauty in the character. When there is beauty in the character, there is harmony in the home. When there is harmony in the home, there is an order in the nation. When there is order in the nation, there is peace in the world.
So on this note, thank you so much, everybody, for being a part of this wonderful talk. And I really hope that we have understood some important concepts.
अरे वाह, ये इमली का पैकेट तो कितना अच्छा.
Yeah, I hope that it's ended now. Yeah. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Shuni, for inviting me over for this talk. It was a great interaction once again. If there are any questions or anything that you would like to just have a talk with me, anything that we've decided, so please feel free to have a small discussion, or any suggestions or anything that you thought that probably we should discuss.
It's a great session, Jitanshu.
Thank you so much.
Always a pleasure to listen to you, and also, yeah, when it is the right time, and definitely want to hear more about your leadership in agriculture and things that you are doing. I know it is not a direct topic for this one, but in general,
No,
yeah, how you
definitely.
apply the leadership into agriculture area. Yeah.
Sure.
I think the leadership values, no matter which role or which field it is, they all are applicable everywhere in every other field. So yeah, it was a power-packed session. Definitely, Jitanshu, amazing to listen to all the highlights that you have brought up in today's session.
Thank you so much. So
a quick question on that note. So so when you mentioned that we do have democratic and different forms of leadership, how is the lazy leadership applicable to the current corporate world? Because we do have a clear roadmaps that have been defined across the companies, and there are quite a lot of policies set. Okay, these are the kind of qualities that we are looking forward to. Then how do these corporates apply that lazy style of leadership?
It's laissez-faire.
Laissez-faire. Okay, sorry.
Laissez-faire is perhaps one of the safest leadership strategies. It has been into effect for many years. Like, yes, being a subset of the democratic style of leadership, corporates are trying to use it. Okay, so I'm giving you the system is working this way. I'm giving you two options, choose amongst yourself, whatever is applicable, work on that and give me the results, right? But ultimately what is happening is still the thread of control is in the hand of the person who's investing that particular source of leadership. Understand it this way. I am an individual manager. I need to get a job done. I have 5 people working under me. I choose, let's say, to give them the seeds of leadership. You decide amongst yourself, you come up. They come up with the ideas. Corporates are very happy with this. But what corporates are not understanding is, what about the others? Are they not part of the team? So are you not killing the motivation of your very team with your own hands? And then you say leadership is missing. What would happen if in case both of them decide to leave? I say I am a manager working for, let's say, INF. Somebody comes from TSC. I'm just trying to manipulate the names, just not to, because it's on a global platform. I don't want to name any companies. Somebody is working for INF. Somebody comes from TSC, wants to take both of them. They're really good. I have my eye on them. I just move out of it. Very smartly, those two go out of the organization. Now what will I do? Now what will I do? How will I manage that? Was I doing the right task? So this is what organizations generally fail to understand on the front, that it is not just the two who are supposed to do this. That is why I generally adopt the democratic style. So I leave it to the entire team. So let's take an example now, and I'll give you a small example to briefly give you. How do you plan a birthday party amongst your friends? Right? You say, okay, we'll arrange something. So somebody arranges this, somebody arranges that. In a marriage, in a family, somebody goes out to arrange the food, somebody takes care of the baratis, somebody takes care of the lodging facility. Everybody contributes together. It's not a one-man job. The ultimate motive is to get the job done. And what is the job? Let that marriage happen successfully. What happens to creating marriages in organizations and corporations? Are those tasks equally challenging as organizing a marriage, right? And if I say, okay, I'll just give you the responsibility, you get it done. That is where the breeding of politics starts. And Srini would remember in the month of January when we were doing it for Let Us, I talked about this very importantly, why politics is ruining the current concepts of leadership. So when I'm investing, first is autocratic. I am the boss. I would get it done. That is one style of politicization. I am the one. Dictatorship. You are not there in the picture. The second is I'm breeding grounds for more politics. One is that, okay, if I am not a politician, but I'm ignoring it, I'm definitely ignoring it. And then I'm letting those people contest amongst themselves, and I'm ruining a beautiful team. So generally in corporations, I do not like corporations using laissez-faire. If you want to really use it laissez-faire, it's the modern concept. Why has it become a modern concept? Because what I said, not my responsibility. Shift shoulders. So what we also need to do is, while you're selecting young organizations, young startups, entrepreneurs are investing into their HR, please take your time. Even if you're in an older organization in a senior position, when you're selecting people, you're doing interviews, ensure that you are keep maintaining this, that person believes it to be his responsibility to identify more. Right? So that is one strategy which corporates can adopt. Another, which briefly I'll say, is in the concept of democratic, there's another concept which says involved leadership. Now, what involved leadership does is, I drop my tag of being the manager. I drop my tag as being a team leader. I get the pods of my trousers up to my knees, and I go into the pond with my team to fish the waters. And when I'm there in the waters, I know how to step on the stones properly and which fish to catch. I can hold the hands of my team and I can guide them. Guys, do it. Practical implementation of your leadership. So that's called involved leadership. This is only possible in democratic. Laissez-faire does not allow that kind of an autocratic. Forget it. It's not going to be there. So in laissez-faire, you can experiment it, but then it will ultimately move into the democratic style of leadership. But one thing which we need to remember is the nature of the job is also important. So certain jobs are there to take out the best out of people. Some are there just to achieve targets for. So that is how we can manage that, right? So that is one question. And Srini, coming back to what you were asking me, what leadership I am applying in the current rural scape and the agriculture that we've been doing in the past few years is like, we are working into the development of cooperative technology purchase, right? Now,
Okay.
what is that? What we are doing is, because traditionally what we've already seen is India, the land holdings are very small. You know, what we are doing with one thing which we've identified is because land holdings are small, the purchase of implements and technology is very limited. And that is perhaps one of the biggest reasons when I compare India's land holding under the agriculture sector, comparing it all to the other primary and the secondary industries, I see this to be the gap. So agriculture in terms of land holding is here, as terms of a resource holding is here, while the other sectors are here. But the contribution is here. So it's a complete reversal. So what in terms of the most costliest thing that in India a corporation needs to have is land, that is in abundance